Yeah, because there was a writer here from the Boston Globe who's now gone. His name was Joe Kincannon, and he was a golf writer, but he saw the race and they put it in the paper and all that. He later started the Litchfield Hills Road Race in Connecticut. Really cool guy, but it's great to see the sport keep growing and growing. And Tatyana and I were talking earlier about the wheelchair races in the early days there when Bobby Hall was the first guy to, as far as I know, take part in a wheelchair road race. And I remember sitting in his chair after he did Boston, and the BAA told him, well, we'll give you a medal, but you got to crack 3 hours. And he did it in a chair like this.
Like no breaks.
Mind-boggling. And Tatyana was saying, no brakes on those chairs.
Scary.
Food for thought. We got brakes. You know, it's like, what the heck are you doing? But I think our sport is, I think, the greatest sport in the world. I also think it's the most competitive sport in the world, notwithstanding the media sometimes. But once you get into the sport, you start to learn it and feel it, and you know how tough it is. But also, while I'm here, I just wanted to salute, well, Toni, for your great work over all the years. But
Thanks,
the best
Mohal.
in the country, I think.
Thanks, Billy.
And Stephen Sambu,
Unbelievable.
who kicked Rod, Frank, and mine's butt by surpassing us all.
You know, speaking of which, Stephen, this is you going for your 5th title in a row, and you're heading toward the Chicago Marathon. How does this race play into that? Are you really pointing for the Falmouth Road Race? Because once again, Leonard Career, a man he's beaten the last 2 years. 2 years ago, it was a good margin, but last year it was like close as close can be. So what kind of shape are you in? Are you ready to defend that title?
Yeah, so I'm really ready now because I've been training hard. I've been getting ready for for this race. You know, for the last, because every year this race is very important for me because this race is my last race before marathon. So I always make it like to be my speed, to make it to be for my speed work, and also I make it to be like special for me because if I win this race, I will run good in marathon.
So it's a confidence builder.
Yeah, confidence.
So how about the field this year? Are you somebody who studies the field, or you just don't think about them and run your own race?
Yeah, so you know, because I know there's Leonard Corder. There's like 4 guys, which I know is going to be tough, but I will do my best. Even if I don't gonna win it, it's going to be okay. But if I win it, it's going to be good.
Well, it's going to be an exciting race. We know that. Hopefully the weather is going to be a contributing factor to fast times. You've run the race in around 32:10, 32:14, 32:17. Interesting, Bill, you ran 32:21, I think, back in 1978 in your last win. So anything around 32:20 or under is really still a solid time. Rod, 32:20, I think that was your year, 1980. But let me ask Frank. Frank, when you came here, did Falmouth already, you knew that you were going to face Bill at that time? It wasn't going to be a fun run.
Oh, it was not going to be a fun run because Bill had won the Boston Marathon that spring, right? And you ran, and he'd run 2:09:27, which was faster than my PR for the marathon. So I knew Bill was good, and you know, it was my first road race because a marathon really isn't a road race. A marathon's a marathon. And so this was the first time, and I was on my way to Europe, so it fit in there. And at that time, we liked running against each other. We didn't avoid each other. Right, no. You know, runners, we didn't avoid each other. And so, and I had a connection, as you said, because my kind of surrogate parents, people who really helped bring me up, summered on Martha's Vineyard. So I used to race sailboats on Chilmark, Martha's Vineyard. And we sailed over here one day, and it was a huge thing, and we had, you know, dinner at Covered Bridge.
At the Flying?
Yeah, at the Flying Bridge. And that was a special treat, so that when I got the invitation, you know, really through Bill and Tommy, this would take me back to when I was 15 years old, and I you know, could sort of come back to Falmouth in a different context. So it really was important. It's been that way ever since, and now my wife, Michelle, we had the serendipity of coming here for many years, almost 20 years, at different times of the year, never having met each other, and then we got married, and so we both have connections here that come from different sources. So we actually have a blended extended family in Falmouth.
Did Did you have a sense, Frank, that, I mean, we've always said that the Great American Road Race and the rivalry between you and Bill, you were the established Olympic champion that everyone saw on ABC with Jim McKay calling that race, and then Bill, not on TV, but still breaking your American record at Boston, and that combination, two guys from Eastern institutions, well-spoken. Did you have that sense at the time that that rivalry was as important as we now know it to be?
I think for about an 8-year period, either Bill or I was ranked first in the world in the marathon. It may have been 9 years.
All through the 70s.
Yeah, so we had overlapping bell curves. My bell curve kind of went like this, and I wasn't quite on the toboggan going down the far side, and Bill was coming up, and our curves kind of crossed here. And then Salazar came on afterward, and again, in Falmouth, you know, his winning here was really his
explosion
as well. So, you know, the history of this race, and I think it speaks so well because of the loyalty of everybody here. We're all back here. We all come back. Steve Jones is here. You know, people come to Falmouth and they come back. And that's the point, because of the community. The homestay is a wonderful part of it. I don't know if you're aware of it. I've stayed with the Carroll family, Jack and Wendy Carroll, for 28 years in a row. You know, and so that's really something.
That's old-fashioned New England road racing. You wouldn't stay at hotels. There was no money, so you'd stay with host families, and it's a grand tradition here.
Right.
And at Joni's race up at Beach to Beacon 2 weeks. But you never see it at any other races.
No, and this is where, if Joni were here, Joni has a tradition. She gets a Falmouth poster, and she has everybody she can find. She seeks autographs for her host family on this poster. I mean, that's the kind of spirit that you have here.
She's Joni, by the way, is normally with us, but she's in at a wedding this weekend, and she can't be with us. Now, introduce Rod Dixon. Rod, of course, was a 1,500-meter Olympian, fourth place in the Olympic Games, and then went on the way to be a sub-209 marathoner and winner of the New York City Marathon and one of the great New York City marathons.
And still, it has the greatest range of any distance runner, I think, in history. Bronze medal of 1,500 meters.
Bronze.
He runs 3:32. He runs 2:08:59 in New York.
Right.
10 years later, that's range.
2:08 in New York City is really something.
Thank you.
And the man that Rod dueled with at that 1983 New York City Marathon, Jeff Smith, is in the building as well, because he was a Providence College grad. So it's all sort of tied together. Rod, you were the first foreign champion to come in this race in 1980, but again, talk about not an easy victory. That was a four-horse race that year. Can you remember it?
Absolutely. I had to sleep on the host family's floor because they continued their party. So I went into the laundry and slept in the bath. But it was that was humbling. And you go out there and you run your best race. But it was a fabulous day, a fabulous field. I mean, I knew all the runners. I knew what they were capable of doing. And I knew that the time that we were on, we were very close to the record. Right. So it was, if you want to be fearful of the record and you want to slow down, look around you and there's about 7 guys with you. Carry on.
Well, talk about it in terms, I mean, there's a huge legacy of athletics and running in New Zealand. But was road racing part of that when you were young at all? Or how did you look at the Falmouth road race when you were first invited?
Well, I came here as a result of the boycott in 1980, and I started road racing. But it was so much, I mean, we had road races in New Zealand, but they were pretty well for clubs. It wasn't the general public. But this was one of the races, and I looked around and I'd go, wow, there's like 3,000-4,000 people running this thing. So it was really a awakening. And I remember the very first road race I ran, which was with Bill in Philadelphia. And Bill was, I think he stayed for like 3 hours signing autographs for everybody. And I just said, I love this energy. I love this friendship. And it's about a community. And it's about getting together and sharing it. And this fella here, this little girl here, the tortoise, finishing is winning. It doesn't matter when you finish. Finishing is winning. And I suddenly realized in road racing that was more important about participation and that everybody having their race.
Great. Here, pass these down.
Thank you.
Pass these down. Keep passing. Keep passing. And then one for you, Rod. There you go. Listen, I want to get out of my chair. Who's got a question for one of the people? Who's got a question? Raise hands. Who's got a question? Hold it.
We're just curious as to who's running tomorrow.
But I'd like to answer. Yeah, what I would like to say, the way I put it, and I'm not sure, I think Bill has his own way and Rod has his own way. Tomorrow, as long as what I am doing is not confused with walking, I'll be okay. And the other honor we have is that I am now probably officially half as fast as Stephen. And now that's not half as fast, it's half as fast. So.
I love it. I did the Falmouth Walk this morning, and I have had the absolute pleasure of being accepted onto the press truck tomorrow, and this is my first ever. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you all out there. All out there.
Who's got a question? Oh, here we go. We passed the microphone over sort of outside.
Rod, did you say you aren't running? You're going to be in the pace with the pace truck, okay? Because I remember the last time you and I ran here, I think you aged me a little bit, just like you did with your time here.
All right, 2-hour marathon. Will it get broken?
Oh.
How long from now, and what's it going to take to do it?
You know, I don't think so myself, but I didn't think I'd see a 2:06 marathon. You know, because I think maybe we all are limited a little. I think our sport has continued to evolve in training and exercise science. So that's the big edge today, is if you have knowledge of training, and you have good coach, you have teammates. Who are your teammates? I have great teammates with the Greater Boston Track Club, with the BAA, and that sort of thing. So if you're running alone, it's harder. And so that's my thought. I don't know, Stephen.
I think it will happen one day. I think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Frank, I mean, do you think it's... Well, first of all, Frank ran 2:10:30, but he was a 27:40s 10,000 meter man, under 13:30 certainly for 5,000 meters, near 4 minutes for the mile, if not under. The bottom line is you never really, you and Bill never ran for time in a marathon. You ran for the wins. So you guys had at least 2 or 3 minutes more than you, I thought.
And that's why it's a little harder for us to talk about it, because rabbits and pace setters weren't allowed. And it would be very unusual to find someone who was willing to sacrifice himself. All I can say is I really don't want to go into it too much in terms of what's going on, because I've done work with U.S. anti-doping.
There's the dark side.
And so I don't want to go into that here. But what I would like to say is that the curve, as improvement doesn't go in a straight line. It goes in a line which I would call sinusoidal. It drifts up and down. I think it's now down where it's going down a little bit in overall performances in the major marathons. And that could be due to any number of reasons. But again, all I can do is hope and work to level that playing field. And again, my goal in all of this has always been, I have to unfortunately say that for Stephen, to make it so that the Americans could line up feeling it was a level playing field. And so I come to it at that perspective. And so in that sense, I don't really care about the 2-hour marathon.
Right.
I want to create a situation for when it happens, I can feel good about it.
Well, I'd like to have it come out of competition rather than just time trialing. I mean, Rod, you guys had, it was Gideon Shahanga was leading that 1983 New York City Marathon from Tanzania, well out in front, and then Jeff Smith went by him, and then you had to spend the whole second half of that race trying to run Jeff down. So it was total competition, which led to a sub 209 in New York City, which is one of the more difficult, probably the most difficult of the major courses, along with Boston. I mean, Billy ran 2:10 there in his first victory in 1976, and for years he was the only guy under 2:13. So, I mean, New York's a slow course. Sub 209 is amazing, but it required that just to win the race.
Yeah, well, we didn't have pace bands or anything. I just wrote in magic marker the splits that I wanted to go through. And when I went through the 5 mile, within 3 seconds of what I'd written down, the 10 mile was within 3 or 4 seconds. I knew what I wanted to go through the half, and all this was coming together. So I put the leaders out of my mind and said, this is my plan.
What were you?
103.20. And so I knew, stay with my plan, let go of the leaders, and hopefully I'll catch them back later on.
Let me ask Tatyana for a second. Tatyana, pass the microphone on down. Tatyana, in the world of wheelchair racing, I mean, what the records, again, the same thing. You see special days. You guys don't like cold weather. You like warm weather to get muscles loose and so you can fire off.
Yeah.
But we've seen records being run. But are we anywhere close to what's possible in wheelchair racing? I mean, how sophisticated is the training? How sophisticated is the chairs, et cetera?
Yeah, so training, I was talking to Steven earlier, and we have pretty much the same training. We do about 100 miles a week. We work on maybe like 3 mile repeats. We work on some hill climbing, some descending, a lot of track stuff. We're in the gym too as well. But I agree with him down there, the gentleman down there. We also, for me, it works the best when I just run my own race. And so I had to consider the weather. I had to consider, you know, which course it is as well. Climbing can affect, and flat courses can affect. I'm a great climber. So in the beginning of Boston, per se, I'm the last person in the at least top 5 women. I'm number 5. And I'm number 5 all the way until about a mile 11 or 12. And when the hills climb, I keep a certain pace. But technology is changing for us too. We're all running in carbon fiber chairs. So they're very steady for the road. They have a lot of stiffness, so we can really put a lot of power into our stroke. And we really focus on just the rotation from 12 to 6. We just continue, we practice rotations all winter long for consistency. So when bad weather hits us, when good weather hits us, that might have to change as well. We can get into a little bit of drafting between the women, which can be fun and exciting, but you never know who's going to win. Manuela has an amazing streak.
Manuela Schar.
Yeah, Manuela Schar from Switzerland, amazing streak. We'll see more athletes from Australia come up as well. They've been running really well. She just won the London Marathon, and close second for me. So you never know who's going to win. It's very, very competitive now.
What's the cost of these chairs nowadays? I mean, talk about when you first began. What was the cost of a chair? What are the cost of these carbon fiber chairs now?
The cost of a carbon fiber chair, the frame is 10 grand. The wheels are 2 grand each, and the front wheel is about 2 grand each. Each tire is about $200. So one week I went through 6 because of the road. We had bad weather all week in training, and a lot of gravel on the road, and so I kept popping tires. It was a really, really bad week. I called my mom, and I was like, I had a bad week. Like, I just went through 6 tires. So it is really, really costly for us. That's why sponsorships are so crucial. That's why, we're really fighting for equality, and hopefully the prize money, as the sport gets bigger, as the competition grows, as media is involved, prize money will just shoot right up. It's amazing. The world best for men and women. It is about 130 for women, which is crazy, and the men are around 120.
118, I think, and you guys just dipped under 130 in Boston 2 years ago?
Yeah, yep.
Well, 128 or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, my time was around 130, but yeah, it's fast. It's
No, it used to win men's races.
Yeah, so it really depends on the course, and the best way to explain it is that we run, so the next time you go out for a run, carry about 20 pounds of weight with you. And that's what we have to carry every single day, every single training, just with our arm power, just with our strength. We don't have anything else on our chair besides a brake for safety. And yeah, there's no difference between any of us athletes here. It's just that we have to carry 20 pounds everywhere. So we got really, really strong from that.
I always thought that people should be able to, other regular folks who don't need chairs, go in chairs and be able to race in chairs just to see what it's like.
Come train with me.
I'm
at University of Illinois.
I think kids would love doing it. We got a question up front.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Bill Rodgers. Bill, I've read in the early days when you first ran the race, you won a blender as a prize. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's true?
Yes, I won a blender. So I think if Steven wins tomorrow, he's going to be given a blender and he's going to get his car towed.
Well, yeah, that was the other part of the question. That you also had your car towed one year? Is that true? You had your car towed one year?
My car was towed. It also got towed when I won New York in '76. So I had a lot of trouble parking my car. So my girlfriend Karen helps me now. Getting a little older. And
Bill,
but
I
we
got
had-
you beat. One year at Falmouth, I got my car towed twice on the same day. That's how they make all the money at the Falmouth Road Race.
Yeah,
the Falmouth
okay.
just tows
So
cars.
here's in 1975, I happened to finish ahead of Bill, and I'm driving out of town, and somebody meets us. I'll never forget, it was a Volkswagen van, and the door opens up, and out comes this tiny portable television set. This guy is carrying it over to my car, and because I'm going up to the airport to fly off to Europe, and I said, "What's this?" And he says, "Well, this is the prize that this person wants to give to first place, and it was assumed Bill was going to win, so Bill was thinking he was going to get a color television set." And I got the color television set, and I enjoyed that set for about 8 years until it just
That's what racing was back then. It was all about, usually be a table full of stuff and you'd win, and the winner would be able to choose what the first gift off the table would be. Rod, talk about, or Stephen, back home in Kenya. Back home in Kenya, I mean, are we seeing more and more just average people running? Because normally, the times I've been in Kenya, it's the top people who do the running, and you don't really see a lot of citizen races. Is that changing at all?
No, it's not changing. It's only like young people running. I haven't seen any like citizen running, like older citizen running. No, nothing changing.
That it's still, if you want to be a real racer, do you go out and run? Because everyone thinks Kenyans love to run. No, you love to make money from running.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key. Now, Stephen, you ran the Boston Marathon this year.
Yes, I did.
Now, Frank, you never ran Boston. That's amazing. That just shows. No, you ran 78. You ran 78, right? But you're already on the downside of your curve. But the bottom line, they said in 76 when Jack Fultz won, when you guys were at the Olympic trials, it was 100 degrees. That was the worst day in the heat-wise. But in the 122-year history of the Boston Marathon, this year was like the worst weather day in 122 years. You were 14th in this race, and you're going in as one of the top 5 favorites. Tell the people how miserable you were on Patriots Day in Boston this year.
Yeah, it was the worst race. You know, like I didn't even see the finish line. I didn't even know if I finished or not, because they told me after like 2 hours, like I finished the race. Because when I was in the middle, I was not even seeing anything. My eyes was like blocked by rain. It was bad.
Did you ever train in anything like that?
Never.
Do you ever want to race in anything like that again?
No.
Now, Rod, the one you won the New York City Marathon in '83, it was a wet day, but it was actually a pretty fast day.
Yeah, what I found is that the rain wasn't heavy enough to wash the oil slick. And so every time you went anywhere near white lines or anything, you almost was like hitting ice. So I had to be very careful. But there was enough water to fill the potholes. So you looked like it was a nice smooth road. You're hitting potholes full of water. So that was a big challenge to try and read the road and read the conditions. Were they going to get worse than this? Were they going to get any better? So it was a bit of a challenge.
So in that sense, from a road surface standpoint, New York's got to be one of the toughest marathons in the world, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, they have improved. They do resealing programs, but in those days, the city said, if you want them sealed, you pay for them. Well, Fred wasn't going to pay for them.
Let me ask up and down the line, if you could make one change to the sport as you see it today from the experience you've had, what would that change be to try to elevate the game, the experience, the whole ball of wax?
Whoa. Probably free beer for everybody.
The beer companies used to sponsor the early road races, at least in New England.
Yeah, I think it blends in to what Steve was saying about the Kenyan runners, is that I would like to see the development and I'm just assuming, and he can speak to that when he gets the microphone, that the young runners coming up, there is almost too much intensity involved in trying to create the interest. They're creating the interest, but I think the coaching has gone a little overboard with the younger athletes. And so what I would like to know from Stephen is, he says, to maybe get a little more handle on bringing kids up more slowly in all the running programs through the schools, and really inculcate into these kids the idea that, you know, success will come in their 20s perhaps sometimes, but not to give in to the pressure now that young kids have to perform early. And I'd like to know from him, is there that same pressure in Kenya where the kids are in essence being overtrained when they're younger?
Yeah, that's very true. You know, what you are saying, it is true now, because in Kenya, like, they start young kids. If you see like somebody like 18 years old, like running marathon, which is not good, you know, like can affect, you know, it will run marathon maybe for like 2 or 3 years and then it will be done because he started running marathon when he was still very young. So, you know, like I think that's very.
How old were you when you started, Stephen?
Oh, marathon?
No, just in general. When you got serious about running.
I think around 16.
16.
Yeah.
And that's when you found out that I really love this and
Yeah.
I can do this well.
Yes.
Uh, Bill, what change would you make if you could?
I think that Frank and Stephen made a great point there, and about, because in the end, even though I hate to talk about it in a certain way, it's a health and fitness factor. We all, particularly if you're a little older, like Rod and Frank and I are, you know, and some of you are, we understand about the health and fitness thing, but still, I've read statistics that most people still haven't found their sport. And so I sometimes wish the media would concentrate more on the Olympic sports, where the door is open to everybody. And I love seeing more people on bikes, even though I use my exercise bike a little, but you know what I mean. Because the greatest athletes in the world are not here on the stage or anywhere on the stage. They're not winning. They're the people, they're just walking down the street. We don't know who they are, really. So much talent is unfound. But I think in the end, it's about our health and fitness. How do we feel about life in general? And when you become a runner, you change, I think. I think you change as a person. And you're more relaxed a little bit. Well, I don't know about the night before the race, but but you are more relaxed. And life is better. So I hope the media and I hope the healthcare community will stand up and recognize this more. This is just the way I feel. You know,
Tatyana, I know that there was the introduction of hand cycling, hand cranking, as they say, really sort of changed. It's easier to come from a disability if it happens later in life through accident or whatever disease. It's easier to start with something that has gears. And we saw sort of a little bit of a lowering of push-room wheelchair racing. And then the Abbott World Marathon Majors a couple years ago introduced wheelchair division. The prize money in those 6 events went up, and so the sport kind of got resurrected just a little bit. That was kind of a lifesaver for wheelchair racing, I think. And now we got like the what's his name? Our Rumachuk, the young man who's our champion, 20 years old, and he's going to be the new face on the men's side at least. And a young lady, Maddie Wilson. There was a great story on NPR radio and also the Boston Globe about how you are an icon to this young girl in the Boston area, 9-year-old, 11-year-old girl. But do you see that? What changes do you hope now will come forth for wheelchair athletics to maintain that sport and see it grow? Because it's a great sport.
It's a growth in education, our sport. It's having me come here speak with you today. It's changing, and we're really thankful for each marathon doing its job in promoting the growth in education. And I started my own foundation, Tatyana McFadden, and it's about educating youth and not only, you know, women and men, but saying that running is for all abilities as well. And so I donated a racing wheelchair to the New York Roadrunners, where they started a wheelchair division at the Kids Run, and that's where it starts. And on Thursday, I was part of the Martin Richards Mighty Miler Run, and we had a wheelchair division there too, where I was coaching and promoting the sport, and it's changing and it's growing, but it just takes time, and I think it's everyone doing the job together and coming to the community, and I think if we do a really nice job here, you know, the big focus is LA 2028. The Olympics and Paralympics are going to be here. And so I want to make sure that we as a country are ready for that. And I think it's coming. Abbott World Majors, you know, being part of that is huge. But I want to see an increase in that. And I want to see more media involvement. I want to see the prize money go up. We're 20 times, we make 20 times less.
Right.
And so I think it's just growth in education. And I think if we could do it here in the U.S., I was talking to Stephen, and I think getting Kenya involved as well, because we don't see wheelchair racers from Kenya, and why? It's because of the education, right? And in our society and how we treat people with disabilities as well. And I think if we can start that education there, we can start a program, and the runners can help coach. And
So, Tatyana, many times you see in coverages of wheelchair racing, there's isn't this wonderful aspect, as opposed to this, look at the athletics, look at how powerful the training. Do you sense that changing, that it's being more respected as actually a sporting competition rather than this only inspiration? If it wants to be inspirational, God bless it. But the purpose of the thing is get from point A to point B as fast as you can and win the darn race.
yes, I think people see me on the cover of Women's Running Magazine. They're like, holy she's so strong and so buff, and that's what I want people to think. There's no difference between all of us. We run the same course. We go through the same training. The only difference is that I'm carrying 20 pounds, and that's my racing chair, and I have to lug it everywhere. And it just takes time, and I'm so thankful to be here and speaking on the panel, and to be at each of the marathons. I mean, I love Boston. I love the community, and so it's been a great partnership with Boston, working with the BAA, and working with John Hancock and the Martin Richards family, and doing the same in New York and Chicago, and making sure that every community is doing something for para sports clubs, essentially. And that's how wheelchair racing will grow in the United States, and then hopefully it'll trend worldwide.
Guys, I know right after this, where are you going to be, Tatyana? You're signing autographs where right after this session?
At the Spalding Center, right by the front door. My children's book came out a couple of years ago. It's a great read. Targeted to age of middle school, so it's actually perfect for adults too. It talks about my disability. It talks about getting involvement with sports and in my community, and how I got involved with marathoning. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
Questions?
For Tatyana, you talked about training, and I'm curious, how much training can you actually do on the roads? And how dangerous is it? You don't find a closed course to train, do you, or do you?
Yeah, so at the University of Illinois, we have a great training center. It's actually an Paralympic training center. Thank you to one of my sponsors, BP. And so going out in the country roads is wonderful for fall training, for summer training. We wear flags, so cars can see us. And there's a group of 27 of us at that university. And so it's like competition every single day. And when it comes to wintertime, Illinois is pretty cold. So we have a training center downstairs where it's all technology based. It's all, we're on like a cylinder dome that we put our racing chairs right on top. We clip the front. It's all connected to iPads, so we can stimulate like we're running the Boston Marathon. We can set the elevations at different points, and we can really hit high peaks, or we can hit really low. And so that's actually what really saves us getting ready for April for Boston. People are like, whoa, how do you stay so fit? And we also lift twice a week. We do free weight. We do a lot of band work, a lot of core work. And we do a lot of our heavy lifting in the winter just to get that volume up, and then we decrease to get strong and smaller in time for a marathon.
Stephen, has training changed since you've begun it all? I know sometimes I've been to Kenya and we've seen weight programs, and it's just making your own weights in the camp. But is there more to just training than just running? Because nowadays, I know when Bill and Frank were young, it was basically just running. Nowadays, there's a lot of drills that are done beforehand and afterwards. Has training changed in the time you've been around?
Yeah, it changed a little bit because like say some people from Europe and some American are coming to Kenya, so they're bringing some technology for weightlifting, all those drills and stuff. So nowadays they are putting in some other new stuff. So it's changing a little bit.
That's great. Listen, we got about 15 minutes, a little bit more left. Do we want to leave that open for autographs? I know you guys want to get autographs and little pictures. So why don't we wrap this up? Why don't we thank Tatyana and Billy and Stephen and Frank and Rod for joining us. And we'll set up a little table, and this will be for the people who are inside the